Hello and welcome to New Beginnings podcast in our third session with Mr. Peter Gordon. If you haven't seen him in the last 2 weeks, you better go look at those podcast recordings because he has been helping us understand not so much finding your purpose, but what would you say?
Cultivating it. Because there's a misconception, I think, sometimes that I call it like an aspirational pie in the sky, that somehow there's this one thing we're meant to do, and sometimes that is the case for some people. Where they find that one thing but there's still a cultivation process, and there's an ability to if something moves you, you can cultivate meaning and purpose from that. But I think to get stuck on this one idea that there's only this one thing, I think it can be detrimental because it takes away from the fact that we're humans and that we are perpetually in a state. We're fluid and we're in a perpetual state of cognitive development. So I think that's the thing I most wanted to point out.
Yes, and we did talk a little bit more about that in the last 2 episodes. So I want you to go back, everyone. If you haven't listened to them, please do and get caught up with us. We are going to, this session, we are ending off with the last question. So we had 3 questions. Why am I doing this? Who is this serving? That is whatever you're doing.
Right. Is it serving you, or is it serving your desire to fit into something that society, your family, that has said this is what you're supposed to be doing, when in reality you haven't really questioned yourself. You haven't questioned the validity of those feelings. Right.
So this week we are looking at, can I walk away from this? So you've been doing everything for everybody for 40 years. Can I actually walk away from doing this activity or activities? Can I just stop being a nurse? Because that's what my parents wanted, what my grandparents wanted, what my aunts and uncles wanted. And now I really feel miserable in this service. I don't want to do it anymore. Can I actually walk away from this? Is this serving me or my family? Is this something I really want to do? Or was it just I did it because somebody told me to do it? So
unconsciously, that is.
Yes. So let's dive in a little bit more on this topic of can I stop doing what I'm doing? Can I jump ship?
Right. Pivot. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I like to refer to this as the courage to quit, which sounds like an oxymoron, right? Is there courage in quitting? And we're in a society that says, suck it up, keep pushing ahead. It's and this is not a knock on anybody's religious belief, but it's right around the corner. God has you. Whatever your religious belief might be, and I simply need to just keep trotting along, right? And in a lot of ways, that does can serve us, right? The problem is it can also harm us, because we get stuck in this space of what we think things ought to be versus accepting what is. Right? It's the versus accepting being present. So when I say the courage to quit, it's really the courage to look into yourself and ask the first question, why am I doing this? Right? In terms of why am I doing this, then if I know I'm saying I'm doing this because this feels good to me, this feels right, I feel like I'm helping people, then you ask, who is it serving though? Is it serving a part of my unconscious that is driven by other people? Family, or is it really driven by something that's truly motivating to me, right? And so that's the big thing. You have to be willing to go down that road to question that. And for a lot of people, that is very difficult. It took me 40-something years to look in the mirror and say, this is not what I want. And that can be a scary thing because in some ways we feel like it's admitting to failure. Right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. We feel like it's this notion that I failed. When my marriage didn't work, I felt like a failure for a long time. The reality
Right.
was it no longer was serving me. It wasn't serving my ex-wife. She wasn't serving me. I wasn't serving her. That was the reality. And in the end, it was being able to accept that. Doesn't mean you don't have grief that comes with that, because it's a loss, right?
Yes.
But it's being able to sit down and say, I had this idea of what that was supposed to be, and it wasn't that, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it can be, and stop me if I'm jibber jabbering too much.
No, you're not.
Yeah. But
Because actually,
mhm.
when you say that, it brought up something that we talk about rethinking your purpose or rethinking your life. When you think of many times in your life when you retract from doing something,
Sure.
or you rethink, okay, something happened, and what is it I'm doing now? Can it actually serve me in the long run, or is it hurting me in the long run?
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you think about that, the thing I tell people, what stops us oftentimes from questioning is actually our unconscious. I feel somebody can argue against this if they wish, but in the realm of psychoanalysis, our sometimes inability to question this part of ourselves is our ego defenses. And our ego defenses exist on the unconscious level. Right. And again, there are different types of ego defenses. There's projection, projective identification. There is introjection, there's sublimation, reaction formation, denial, repression. There's several of them. By themselves, they're not bad. It's when we over rely on them, that's where they cause the problems, right?
Right.
So you can imagine where you are miserable in your job. Yes, you're making six figures. But you're in denial that you are miserable, or you're making six figures and you intellectualize the stress away, right? You rationalize that, you know what? Like, it's surprising to many people. There's a profession that has a pretty unfortunate kind of high rate of suicide, and it's actually in doctors, medical doctors, because many go into this field thinking this is what they want to do, and then they're miserable.
Yeah.
Yes, they're making 200, 300, 400,000, but they're utterly miserable because they're stressed. They're worried about malpractice lawsuits. They're stressed about the patients that they work with. I've started to work with several. You know how many lawyers I know that aren't doing law? Hundreds of thousands of lawyers that aren't even doing law, right? So, but for many, they intellectualize. I see it often with people in those realms. They intellectualize their stressors away. They go, "Oh, well, I'm stressed, but you know what? I am making $300,000. I get to drive this particular car. Nothing wrong with that." And sometimes that's just life, right?
Right.
But it prevents that. But that's the unconscious. That's that unconscious part that you don't realize that's preventing you to explore the idea of perhaps this is not the path that I should be on, or not should be on, but what best serves my needs.
Right. So when we say, can I walk away from this? We are really trying to tap into our subconscious.
Yeah, the unconscious. We are trying to work through parts of ourselves that we don't know is there, but are actually behind the scenes, really the driver. Right. Really the driver of what we do.
So how do you bring that to the forefront?
A lot of it is I say this not too because I'm a therapist and a doctoral student in psychology, but it's the truth. Therapy can help, and we're not talking like short-term therapy. Effective therapy is actually very long-term. You know, it could also be like life coaching, but again, they're very long-term. But it's a willingness to explore the unconscious. It's kind of why when I work with people like in like life coaching ways, I tell them, pay me what you can afford for now. Now that price might change over time. That's fine. But I offer that because I want it to be as affordable and as accessible as possible for people, because I know it's a process to break past break into that unconscious. Like, we can sit here and pretend, but here's the reality. The unconscious, everything that we do, there's a hidden meaning behind it.
Yes. We
can pretend, it's just something. There's always, the unconscious is always present. It's always driving how we function. The issue is either it manages us or we manage it. Right. And sometimes, it's like you're with a partner and they might have said something. There's something behind that. The key is you can either let it go or you can help them try to dig deeper as to why they're feeling that way. Does that make sense?
Yes. But then sometimes that might bring up things that you may not want to deal with at that particular time.
That is why therapy, in that sense, is methodical. It is exploring the person's defenses. When somebody comes to me, if I take a psychodynamic approach, which is an offshoot of psychoanalysis, I am very, very careful to slowly but surely. That's why I tell people I'm very cautious about the notion of looking at somebody's diagnosis and treating based on the diagnosis. It's important. But what I'm trying to get into is how has this person's lived experience, how has their lived experience shaped this person in front of me? I'm trying to understand what are their level of ego defenses? And in turn, how has their ego defenses manifested into how they function and how they interrelate with others? That is a process. That is sitting down, that is going through childhood, that is the root of it. Now, I'm not saying other therapeutic things can't help. Cognitive behavioral therapy looks at thought process. It says, let's correct maladaptive thought. 100% that works. Solution-focused brief therapy looks at just helping you adjust thing, kind of helps you with short-term fixes, right? To say, look, we've done this before. So all these things have a place. But I think if we really want to explore how to develop the courage to quit, how to develop the courage to pivot, we have to explain what stops us, what shapes us, and that is on the unconscious level. That is dealing with our ego defenses and our level of function. My ego defenses have always been, and it took me a while to figure it out, was intellectualization. I love to intellectualize, and I also love to rationalize things away. Right. Not an ego defense. Another ego defense is people don't think about. I don't know if they call it ego defense, but I think it should. It's called cognitive dissonance. It's when we want something to be so true, we ignore the things that are in front of us. We know it's not true, but if we were to say, and that's, I guess, cognitive dissonance is more really on the conscious level, but it's a willful desire to say, if I admit that I was wrong, right? People might view me as stupid. People might view me as right. But so we dig into the dissonance part and we stayed. If you think about cognitive dissonance, the most poignant example is the rioters at the January 6th thing, or the QAnon type individuals who are so bought into the idea that this thing is such that they couldn't see past the reality that was in front of them. Right. And so I have empathy for those people. I have empathy because those oftentimes, I see them in therapy. I see those individuals in therapy. And so hopefully this sort of makes sense to your listeners and viewers.
Yeah, well, you see, I can bring this to the attention of some of my clients, for example, because as a functional nutrition coach, we do not look at just what's happening right here. We go digging deep, looking at what were triggers from before, even when you're born. Were you born as a C-section versus normal birth? If you had breastfeed versus bottle feed, all these things play a part in understanding what your nutrition problems or issues and trying to figure out what some people's root cause problems are. When it's like, I can't lose weight, or I'm always stressed, or I'm always fatigued. All these things have a part to play. Your life cycle, your life, your whole life, as well as your genetics, have a huge part to play in what's going on with you at this point in time. And a lot of people don't look at it as a process. They think there is a quick fix. It's not a quick fix. You have to consider everything, the whole background.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the
Results.
it's the exact, you couldn't have put a better metaphor or example to tie it into it. That is it. That is the ability to sit down and recognize. It's sort of one of the things why I chose to pursue a doctorate was that in psychology is that as a licensed therapist, I can maybe attempt to test and assess and diagnose, but it has to be signed off by a psychologist. So I said, you know what, I want to be able to control that. And so I chose a psychology program that has a doctoral program that has more of a psychodynamic sort of emphasis, because it says if we're doing the assessments and diagnosing, let's look at the entire picture. When we do the clinical interview, let's look at everything from this person's childhood, their birth order, any illnesses they had, their race, their sexual orientation. We want to know everything because it's data, it impacts everything. So to bring it back to this issue about the courage to quit is really about understanding how your level of function, right? And once you realize that, and I tell people this all the time, sometimes when you go through this, it will cause careers to end. It may cause marriages to end. It will cause friendships to phase away. It will cause profound changes in your life. And for a lot of people, that is a very sort of scary concept, right? And so, it's being able to explore these feelings. In my current relationship, I'm not afraid to say, listen, I feel this particular way. How it lands, it all depends on sort of how we say it. But I also recognize that there are moments where I may hold on to something a little bit longer, because I also may have a slightly obsessive personality, which means I'm like trying to figure out, does this really mean what it means?
Are you intellectualizing things again?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I have to catch myself in those moments. And so that came from somewhere. That came from perhaps, rationalized. Like I grew up very, very poor in Jamaica, homeless at one point, and with an odd sort of setup between my mother and father. So in some ways I rationalize, or intellectualize things that I really should just say, pardon my language, but that's some bullshit.
I got you. I got you.
What are you doing, Peter? So the courage to quit is really at its core about a willingness to look into your unconscious, find what's preventing the ability to explore your true feelings and emotions, because your feelings and your feelings in particular are two things. One, they're temporary. Two, they're directives.
Directives and temporary. Okay.
Yeah, they're temporary. So no feeling is permanent. There's enough data to tell you there is no feeling is permanent, right? Even if somebody is in a deep depression, that feeling, it ebbs and flows. Right?
Yes.
It ebbs and flows. And so if you understand that no feeling is permanent, the question you ask is, well, what do I do with the feeling? Well, the feeling is a directive. But for many of us, the coping systems prevent us from exploring those feelings and therein lies the foundation of the ability to have the courage to quit, or another way of saying it is the ability to pivot, the ability to adjust, the ability to be in the here and now, or to live in the present, versus obsessing over a past you can't change, or being anxious over a future that you really cannot control. You figure, how does this feel to me right now? Why am I doing this? How is it serving me? Who is it serving? And then say, does it feel good, or doesn't feel bad, or is it not for me? And I can step away from it.
So give me two, for us to wrap up, give me two coping systems to deal with that.
Well, that's the thing about coping systems. That's the point. Coping systems, you have to be mindful of it because they can prevent the growth. I think the key is, the primary thing I say is to develop self-awareness, which by itself is very aspirational because nobody's truly ever fully self-aware. But how I would answer that question is work on self-awareness. The more self-aware you are, the more you can use your coping systems in a more healthy fashion. What I've learned, the coping mechanisms, that the key to coping mechanisms is that to not rely heavily on one.
Right.
It's
just like telling a client, there are many different protocols to having a good diet or being able to build muscle, but you can't use one. Everybody's different. It's a individual.
Everybody's lived
everybody's different. So
everybody's lived experience different. So I'm very cautious about saying there is this one cookie cutter thing. What I do say is that with self-awareness, or with the continual desire to work on self-awareness, will come an ability to consistently question, right? And when you question, you realize, oh, that thing I was mindful of, I was afraid of, it's not so bad. I'm doing a series now. I realize I talk about ego defenses. So I'm doing this little thing on like TikTok, and I posted on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm going to try to explain different types of ego defenses. And I'm going to say, like I just did one today on introjection, which is the opposite of projection, is where you internalize the views of others, right? So somebody can say, you are not patient. You are insecure. You're whiny. You can internalize that.
Yeah.
If that's how your personality works,
Right.
And so I'm explaining each day. I'm going to, for the next, maybe, 7 or 8 days, I'll explain one ego defense, because what you'll find is you'll see yourself in several of them, or you might see yourself heavily in one, and you might go, holy crap, that's me. I do that. And so it goes back to my point. The more self-aware you are, the more you can manage the dogmatic use of these ego defenses, because that is how you cope, is to be able to recognize when you're not processing.
So what I'm thinking right now, sometimes when you get these ego defenses, how about, and I'm looking at it from a different aspect, how about adding affirmations to change? Okay, so you see what you're doing, you're being more self-aware.
Absolutely.
Of what's going on with you. Now you want to use things to help you get out of the negative. If
Absolutely.
Thing.
Absolutely.
So using affirmations, for instance,
absolutely,
can be a great coping mechanism.
There you go. I know it's very kind of all over the place, but
it is.
but yes, affirmation. This is where other therapeutic modalities can work, and affirmation is part of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Affirmation could be in the form of thought stopping, right? Which is CBT, which says, for example, if your constantly thoughts are racing, fixated on one thing, I've had patients take a rubber band and snap their wrists and go, stop, man, you're going down that path again, right?
Right. And what do you call affirmations, or what did you?
They're just, I wouldn't.
Modalities.
Yeah, they're used in different modalities. They're used in like cognitive behavioral therapy. They're used in dialectical behavioral therapy. or DBT. The point I'm making is that absolutely things like affirmation can be a reminder. You can put things up on your wall and say,
Yes.
oh, it's okay to, stop lying to. I've had a person do this. They chose to do it, and and it works for them. And as they write on their wall, stop lying to yourself.
Okay.
And that's what they do. That's their thing. They look up and they say, stop lying to yourself, because for years they were in denial.
Right. Right.
And it's a reminder. But oftentimes when you recognize that you're over relying on something, that's the beauty of self-awareness. There's a existential psychologist that I love his work, still practicing, I think, into his 90s, or he's an existential psychiatrist. His name is Irvin Yalom. And he wrote a book, and I don't know if I mentioned it before. He wrote a book called Staring at the Sun, Overcoming the Dread of Anxiety, overcoming the death anxiety, overcoming the dread of death, right? And he argues and he says, existentialism he said, self-awareness is a treasure almost as precious as life itself.
Okay.
Right? And the argument is that when you are aware of something, you can't turn that switch off anymore.
No, you cannot.
Once it hits you, you cannot turn that switch off anymore. It's there. It's in your face. And what you do with that is up to your level of how you want your life to adjust.
Yes.
So, hopefully that makes sense.
So it's Irving. What's his last name?
Irvin Yalom. So Yalom is Yalom. And he wrote a book called, the two books that I love from him, Staring at the Sun, Overcoming the Dread of Death. And the second one is Love's Executioner. Very easy reads. And he's more of what we call an existential psychotherapy, where they look at the benefit of having meaning and purpose to one's life, the benefit of being comfortable with the fact that we're going to die one day, right? And how do we live our life based on that reality? Right.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Peter. This is a lot of information, especially for persons who may not have dived into psychoanalysis or psychology and mental health. But this is why we do these things at New Beginnings Podcast, to share with others, give them the information to probably spark an interest to know that, hey, I need help. And if I do need help, there are these people that I can go to get help. I may not understand everything that's going on, but I need help. So now I was like, hey, let's see what this guy could tell me, and find him and talk to him or get directives, as you know, other mental health, licensed mental health personnel. Just get out there and get the help. We, especially Black people, are afraid to do that. So we are encouraging us to go out there and get the help. And as Peter said, this is not something that is short term. It is long term, to be able to work and realize and be self-aware of what's going on with you on subconsciously. Yes. So it's all
everything. Everything we do, there's a hidden meaning behind it. Right. There really is. Now we can obsess over every minute detail. And I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is when you sit back and think about every decision you make, there is something behind that drove it. Some part of our personality that's driving that decision. And you always have to question, where does it come from? Right. Again, I'm not saying
who is it serving?
Yes.
And can I quit?
And
can I walk away?
And you walk away. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter, for being here as one of our guests at New Beginnings Podcast. And this is not going to be the last. I know you're a busy person, but this is not going to be the last. We here love the idea of teaching others to understand who they are, and to be able to find out who they are. and, always want a healthier lifestyle and enhance your well-being through understanding who you are. So it's not about finding your purpose, but celebrating and growing and understanding who you are as you grow, because our life is a life cycle. It's a continuum. It's not something that's static. So I want to thank you so much, Peter. You have any last words for me?
Actually, I will say, if anybody wants to sort of follow my various musings, because I tend to try to post a lot, not a lot, but something that sort of moves me that day, I'm all posted on social media. So if you wanted to follow, the best place to follow me, and I always tell people, is Instagram. Instagram is the best place, and the handle is, and it's funny because my marketing person says, put Dr. Gordon there. I'm like, well, I'm not a doctor yet. They're like, manifest it. My Instagram handle is dr.petergordon, one word. That's my Instagram handle. And then on TikTok, if you like quick videos, I try to do 1-minute videos, because I think most people can digest the certain things I say in 1 minute. And that one is not that same thing, except it's Dr. Peter Gordon. On TikTok. So Instagram is dr.petergordon, and Instagram is Dr. Peter Gordon. I am not a doctor yet. I'm in a doctoral program. But I chose the handle because I wanted to hold on to it, because I didn't want anybody to get it. So just put that there, and
put it out there in the universe. Don't be trying to take that.
I can't turn back now. I can't drop out of the program. I better finish.
You better.
Yeah.
So thank you again so much, Peter.
Very cool.
We at New Beginnings appreciate you, and
no problem.
I wish you the best in every endeavor that you are undertaking in life. So keep going, keep aspiring, keep being you.
Cheers. Thank you.
You are most welcome. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening in to New Beginnings Podcast. I'll see you soon. Have a great day.
All right.